All right, I'm joined today by Rachel Richeson, a 2025 U.S. indoor champion in the weight throw and member of Team USA at the World Championships in the hammer. And Rachel, we're at that kind of funky point in the season where it's pretty far into the off season, but also still kind of comfortably a ways away from indoor openers. How are you doing right now?
I'm doing good. Yeah, off season's been great. Other than the past week, I got a couple wisdom teeth out, so training's been a little a little disrupted for the past week, but no, it's been a really good fall. Um, had our first kind of snowfall in the past couple of weeks, so back outside throwing in the snow. That's always fun. But yeah, no, doing good.
What does training look like for you at this point in the off season? And I guess, do you have like a set date target for your indoor opener? Like how far out are we from that?
Yeah, probably about a month out. Probably gonna haven't totally confirmed, but thinking about opening up like kind of middle of January, go to a meet that Ashlyn's going to. Still have to confirm that, but yeah, probably about a month or so out from indoor. But yeah, we're in the full swing of things now. Throwing 4 or 5 days a week, lifting 3 days a week, and mixing in all the core and plyos and stuff in the midst of that. And so yeah, we're definitely up in full go at this point.
I know you posted a video when you guys got that snowfall of, throwing the hammer outside. When you are someone who takes the weight throw so seriously indoors, like I said, you were the national champion last year. What does kind of this training split look like for you between weight and hammer at this point in the off season?
Um, I mean, right now I'm still not really doing any dedicated weight throw practices. And even once we get into the bulk of indoor, I'm still really only throwing like only weight throw probably once a week. Um, just because obviously hammer is the more important one. We'll always want to, keep the feel of that. But so Sundays are always just hammer. And then usually Tuesdays, Thursdays will probably be like mostly, if not all hammer, might, kind of warm up with a few weight throws inside, but then do the bulk of stuff outside. And then usually Fridays is the day that like, okay, we'll maybe just stay inside today and just throw some weight. But I haven't really gotten to too much of that yet. Yeah. So like even though I do have kind of like, yeah, a more serious indoor season, it's still obviously putting the priority on hammer and getting good reps outside and things like that.
Yeah, of course. I get the indoor season is, if we're talking about recapping your 2025 season, the indoor season is a great place to jump off because it really set the table for, I think, everything that you were able to do. Where your last three meets in a row, you were over 25 meters. You set a new PB at 25:28,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then 25:26 to win the US title. So, what did that indoor season last spring and winter tell you about what might be possible outdoors?
Yeah, I mean, and I've talked about this before, but just because we emphasize throwing the weight like a hammer, like it's the same technique. I'm doing two winds, four turns. It's the same kind of like technical emphases we work on in hammer. It's just shorter and heavier. And so the fact that that was getting a lot better and getting so consistently better was exciting. Yeah, it's always fun to see whatever ball you're throwing go a lot farther than it has before.
How much did you see things in the fall of 2024 that would kind of, like, were you seeing things in practice that were kind of giving you hints that a season like you had in 2025 might be possible? Or once those marks started coming, was it kind of a surprise to you?
Yeah, I th it no, I think we saw it coming in the fall, and I think the biggest thing was like I had a strong fall and like took a couple weeks off to get married and then came back, and then once it started getting like cold and snowing and it was winter and the marks didn't really start to fall off. Whereas like usually kind of in the winter, it's like, okay, do whatever you do in the fall, kind of, hope to just kind of keep it going through the winter. And then once it starts warming up, you can kind of start moving the mark a little more. Um, Once that fall off in the winter didn't really happen, we were like, okay, like we might kind of really be onto something here. And then, yeah, I think that just kind of showed once spring came around, it started warming up again, things really started taking off. So,
And then when you win that national title, I know in your Instagram post you said that's the first national title you'd won at any level, and it was a senior national title in the weight throw, beating out women like Brooke Anderson and Annette Chickenwoke, an Olympic silver medalist. Like, how special was that moment for you in Ocean Breeze last year?
it was exciting. It was, yeah, again, like I said, it was my first nationals of any kind. I got really close once in college. Well, I guess twice. I was the one seed coming in on the COVID year, but who knows what would have happened there. And then my senior year, or redshirt junior or whatever, got beat on the last throw by 2 centimeters. So yeah, so that I mean that was obviously really exciting. It's also kind of one of those things of like I also knew there I had more in the tank, and it was my round five throw I put into the right chain link fence they have there. That if I had lined that one up, it would have been gone. But
Put a
no,
number out there.
I don't know. I'm not going to say that. I will say we would have been put like there's a very hard backstop
Uh-huh.
at Ocean Breeze, just kind of, you know, past some 25, 26. I think it would have been a pretty hard bounce into that backstop. But you can never speculate too much about that kind of stuff. But no, it was exciting, even though yeah, wish I would have got that one back, but the fact that it was still good enough to come away with one was special. And my parents were there, I'm from northeastern Pennsylvania, not too far, like a couple hours from New York City. So the fact they were there and AG flew out to be there to coach me up, which was really special just with it being, such a busy time in the college season. Um, yeah, it was just really cool.
Yeah, that was definitely a really exciting moment, especially because like U.S. indoors, we only get two events, so it's like the national champions. I feel like are even more special in some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
Um, and then a month after that, we go to Ramona. You start opening up your outdoor campaign, and 78-80. I was last night just rewatching the video of that throw because that's one of like my favorite videos I've ever seen of just the sheer elation when that mark comes up in round five. What do you remember about that, I guess, 45-second span of stepping into the ring,
Yeah.
releasing that ball, and then waiting for that mark to come up?
Yeah. Well, the throw itself, I had had a good throw the round prior. Kind of struggled the first couple rounds of the competition just with it being a season opener, kind of getting my feet under me again. But yeah, it was round four, first round finals through 74 or something, I forget. But that was just kind of my goal for that comp. I was originally not planning to open up until I think the following week. AG was taking a group of our college kids down to meet at UVA. And so I was just going to go there with them. There was, going to be an invite section and a couple of the other kind of post-collegiate professional girls were going to be there. So I was just going to do that, but then saw um just come across my feed again, kind of the prize bonus structure that they have at Ramona and just kind of like where training had been. We're like, okay, I think I could go out there and throw the world standard, which was 74, and come away with a little extra money. And so kind of quick adjusted the plans. I think maybe a week, no more than a week or two beforehand, um, to decide to go out and do that. And so yeah, after round four through 74 or whatever, kind of, checked that box off and um still kind of saw something in my throw that I didn't love. And so I'm like, okay, out of entry one, two, I'm just gonna work my right as hard as possible and just see what happens. And did that in one, two, three, four, just happened automatically. And I knew coming off of my hands that it was a good throw. I knew it was going to be a PR because it felt better than my previous throw, which was, you know, just short of a PR. And so and they don't have like sector lines out there in the
Hmm.
so like it's hard to tell how far things are going. I knew it was farther than the last ones. I was like, okay, thinking maybe 76-ish, like maybe pushing 77, but probably 76. And came out of the ring. Like I know it took a long time for the mark to come up. Like it was probably the better part of a minute. Just because I think they were like double shooting every mark just to like make sure that it was accurate. Um, and yeah, and then when it came up, like yeah, just so excited, so like yeah, I don't know if I guess shocked like in the moment of like okay, I didn't think that throw was that far. Not that it was like something I, never thought I was capable of, kind of shocked. Um, just that throw in particular was not, expecting it that soon. So just yeah, just really excited, really happy, just, obviously emotional and yeah, just excited.
Yeah, I was out there in the sector. It was like me and I was sitting next to Scott Russell and we were watching it and it's like that thing where like we know it's further than the last throw, but you can't really tell how far it
Yeah.
is. And then like I couldn't see the mark. So I was waiting for it to pop up in the live results and I was like, "Oh my God." That was awesome. Have you ever felt a throw like that before, or was that just so like outstanding compared to everything you had done to that point, like feel wise?
Um, I mean, I've a small handful of times, like, because when it's a good throw, it's just like you set it up so well through 1-2 that like 3-4, it just happens and you don't really have to do anything. And like probably just a handful of times, like I guess at like a lesser intensity in practice, but just feeling where I line one up good. But definitely was the best feeling of just like okay, everything's clicking, everything's just happening. Um, yeah.
And then as your season moved along last year, it kind of reaches that roller coaster point where there's really good marks mixed in, like 76, 60 in Tucson, 77, 80 in Edmonton. But then there are some complete like no mark competitions in there. So I guess emotionally and mentally, like how are you managing that kind of middle part of your season where the signs were still there that things were going really well, but then there were some competitions that just weren't breaking your way?
No, it was really hard. Um, yeah, there was definitely a point in the middle of the season there. Like I was struggling. I was having a hard time just because like it's not like everything was going poorly. Like training was still going really well just about the entire time. I would, yeah. The Europe trip was a little tough because I got super sick the first few days there. Um, and then just also just mix in with that being my first time competing and training overseas. And so that was obviously a really amazing experience and getting that under my belt was something that was really helpful. But yeah, but then coming back after that and then with Ironwood, like I was training really well and I remember I touched on this before with you, but just like having trouble like just putting it together when meet energy comes along. So like like for example, I think about it like on my finish because a lot of it was having trouble like yeah, just finishing it in the sector. So like if I look at some of my best throws from 2024 where I'm catching four, the ball is just about like 90 degrees from zero. Between 2024 and 25, I added just about like probably a good 45 degrees of catch at least on some of my better throws, pushing 60. And so that's a whole extra amount of time that you have to like account for being on the ground and staying with the ball before you finish. And so I think that just being one of a few things of just like doing it a lot better than I was used to. And where in practice, like things are a little slower and, you can kind of like think through it a little more and feel positions a little more. Whereas with meets, it's just adrenaline and you're trying to hit one and things are going and it doesn't always line up. And it was hard because I was really seeing things go in practice. Like I think a good summary was, I fouled out of Ironwood and I stayed at Ironwood that whole week to train before pre because that was 2 weekends. So instead of, flying home and going back out, I just stayed at Ironwood to train. And like 3 days after I, fouled out Ironwood, I threw 2 training PRs with the 4K there. And then went out to pre and had a decent opener, but then also, had more trouble getting one in. And so that was what was really hard about it was again, it's one thing when everything is going poorly and you're competing bad and you're training bad, and that's hard. But it's almost a little harder when training is going well and you're just struggling to put it together in a meet.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah.
yeah, I know we had kind of talking throughout the season talked about how it was kind of just you weren't fully used to yet, like how good you were now. And so it was kind of trying to get that to line up. When you look at kind of the improvements from 2024 to 2025, is it like just something technically clicked and you got that much better there, or was it more like fit, like you got like stronger, more athletic, faster in the ring, or kind of a mix of those two?
A mix. Like I definitely got a little, well, I got, I would say 2025 was the first year since college where I saw some of my strength numbers go up. And that's also because I was a little bit bigger in college, like nothing crazy, but so to now be hitting higher numbers at a little bit leaner was definitely a good thing to see. Um, but I think it's also just so 2025 was my third year here in Ashland, and we saw great improvement in my first season and then again in my second. Um, but even those first 2 years, there was still, you know, a lot of reverting back to old habits. And especially my first year, like, yeah, I threw 73 and 71 something, but those were my only 2 meets over 70. And then last year, I had a few good meets, but also a lot of just like, again, a lot of inconsistency there. I think this year was where, the technique changes that we had been working so hard to make, like really clicked for me. I guess at least in just how the season went in training more so in competition. Um, but because I mean, again, when I got here, it was a complete like overhaul of my throw. Like there were things that like literally times where like AG would say like, no, don't do this, where this was a direct cue I had been told to do in college. And it's not like, like one is better than the other and there's just different ways of thinking about the throw and you know, different techniques and different ways to, to skin a cat that what AG wanted to teach me was just very different than what I was used to and obviously works a lot better for me and the thrower that I am and what my strengths are. Um it just yeah, just a matter of taking time to finally make those changes that we wanted to see.
When you're in the season last year and you have like that meet energy that is kind of getting to you, but training is still going well, like what are you kind of focusing on, either physically or mentally between meets to try and like, I guess, be a little more, because you don't want to like completely be flat in a meet. Like you want to let that adrenaline
Yeah.
fuel you a little bit. But what were you kind of doing to try and not let it overwhelm you and kind of get you out of the technical cues that you can usually hit in training?
Yeah, and I think that's just it. It's just like focusing on the cues as much as possible. And at a certain point, just being like, okay, if I can go into a meet today and like hit these positions, I'll be happy. And like hopefully distance will take care of itself. And if not, then we'll get on the next one. But yeah, I think just working really hard to focus on those technical pieces and not get caught up on the other stuff, which is hard because, when you're traveling, competing, and it's not going well, it's hard to not think of, I just, kind of blew that opportunity or, oh, did I, it's just another challenge of like throwing professionally. It's like, oh, I spent this much money to come here and then I fouled out and that stinks. And you just can't think about that. And I think when I was kind of in the trenches of, things just going poorly, it's hard for those thoughts not to creep in. But I think, just especially with like my husband and AG and just the support system I have around me did a really good job of like helping keep me on track and not letting me spiral too much.
Was your 77-8 in Edmonton, was
Yeah.
that your last meet before USA's or did you have another
Yes.
one?
So
Okay.
yeah, that was it.
So that was probably a pretty good, let's get
Yes.
into some happy stuff now. That was probably a
Yeah,
pretty good confidence
it
boost.
was. It
Moving
was.
into USA's, like how important was that before you went to nationals?
Yeah, no, it was good. It was finally just a meet. I felt like, okay, I'm back to like throwing how I know I can. Cause like even yeah, even the whole series I had there I liked. I think there was like a 73 and a 76 and it just went well. I felt comfortable. I felt like I was like executing well on, the things I was trying to do and yeah, it felt like a little bit of relief of like okay, I've figured it out.
When I talked to Janae and Brooke about this at USA's, but when did you hear that Brooke had the like Continental Tour
Yes.
wild card or whatever it is?
Oh,
And
yeah. It
did that
was
like
just in the couple weeks leading up to USA's. And actually I think that yeah, this was just kind of something that people have been like sort of talking about. I first heard about it from talking to somebody at Tucson. But what some of us thought it was going to be was um whoever the Continental Tour leader was in 2025.
mm.
That was what my understanding of it was. I guess that was obviously mistaken, and that would have been Brooke anyway. But um yeah, I think leading up to USA's, it was kind of nice to have that like clarity of okay, there is going to be one extra spot, and it's still going to be a battle of who gets it. Um, but obviously, whenever there's another opportunity, another spot, that's never a bad thing. So.
When you were kind of coming up to USA's, were you reflecting at all on what happened at trials in 2024 where, it was not the best day for a lot of people. Kind of a really weird competition, top to bottom. And you finish, I think, like 23 centimeters off of a ticket to Paris. Like, how much, if at all, were you kind of like looking back on that experience and being like, I'm not going to let that happen again?
Um, I mean, kind of a little like what I was saying before. Like it's natural for some of those thoughts to kind of creep in. I would say I was definitely not trying to think too much about it on purpose. I also think it was good that I got to go and throw it pre and like have another round of throws there. Just kind of, you know, another experience. So my last one wasn't trials, but I think at the same time, like what happened at trials kind of like guided our approach to training the whole season. So like especially where like kind of how trials shook out and like so one thing AJ always talks about is having like a pocket throw. And it's a throw that you can go and pull out of your pocket anytime and repeat. It's not gonna win, but it'll be good enough and get you into finals and it'll kind of do what you need to do. And so I think in 2024 I was throwing far enough that if I had this kind of pocket throw down, that it probably would have been enough to make that team. And um and so that was a big goal of ours for 2025 was like, okay, kind of no matter what's going on, and especially going into USA's where it's such a pressure cooker environment and so intense and like such big stakes that having that kind of pocket throw that you can at least like put out there and be safe and kind of build from it is so important. And I think that's what I did at USA's. Like again, it wasn't my greatest day, but I was really, really happy with yeah, going out there, having that pocket throw, getting a good throw in right off the bat that, I didn't know if that like after round one, I didn't know if that was going to be enough. And obviously I would have loved to build on that a little more, but ultimately it was mission accomplished. And that's, you're always trying to throw your best, but at the same time, that's what USA's is for, is to make that team. And I was really happy with that we executed on what we had been playing the whole year of again having that pocket throw, something that's you can pull it out when you need it and be good enough to get where you want to go.
Yeah, so 74.57 on your opener gets you third, gets you a ticket to Tokyo. When that competition finally, well, I guess first of all, in the competition, were there like nerves when you weren't seeing you weren't seeing betterment on your mark, but you knew like Janae's behind me, Annette's
A
behind
little
me,
bit.
Aaron Reese
I
is
mean,
behind me.
just a little bit of similar feelings of like, okay, like I have to still be ready to go. And that's kind of hard to juggle of like kind of keeping an eye of, kind of where you stand in the competition, but also not wanting to get too far outside of yourself and what you need to be focusing on. And so again, obviously, kind of like I said before, like it's natural that some of those kind of thoughts are gonna creep in of like, all right, like I've been here before, and last time it didn't, you know, turn out well for me. But at the same time, like I feel like I did a better job of staying focused on my own throw so that I could be ready to respond if I needed to, and that ended up not needing to, but hopefully would have gone better and I would be able to answer if I needed to and yeah, execute on my throw in that moment.
Yeah, and then once you go through team processing, you get all that sorted out later that night, it kind of starts to sink in when you're with like AG and your
It
family.
was much more fun this time because I
Yeah.
had to go through team processing last year
Oh
and
yeah, I guess so.
that was probably the worst part. I was
Yeah.
dreading it so much because like yeah, there was maybe like a 10% chance that I could still make the team depending on how
Hmm.
rankings and stuff played out. So I still had to go. I still had to try on the uniform. I tried on the opening ceremony stuff, the closing ceremony stuff. I did all of it, and that sucked a lot.
Hmm.
It was a lot more fun this time to be trying it on and know I was actually gonna get to wear it. I had uh in 24 AG was there with me when I did all that stuff and he took a couple pictures of me in the in the jacket and the uniform and so I had printed those out and put it in my training book for the year and so it was just kind of like a lot happier ending for that. A
Yeah.
lot more fun at team processing this year.
Yeah, I bet. That's something I guess I never really think because even if it's like kind of solidified with rankings points, like even like just for alternates, they probably make them do that. So I guess
That
that's something I've never
that
really
that was
considered.
probably the
That's
worst part. That was yeah, that was hard.
oof. Well, yeah, well, thankfully this year it was a much more exciting
A lot more
occasion.
fun.
What was I guess the celebration for you guys like when, you realize it's officially done, like Rachel Richardson is a member of Team USA.
Yeah. I mean, it was awesome. Yeah, my husband was there with, you know, just celebrated. He was there and, didn't do anything crazy. Just because it was, for me, it was obviously I was thrilled. I was so excited. I was so happy. Also, just like relief of like, okay, I got the job done. I did it this time. It's awesome. So, yeah.
And then it's like a month and a half before Worlds. I'm checking your world. Okay, so you did go to Silesia. So you got a
Yeah.
competition in between then. Have you ever had a season that's gone into mid to late September before? What was
Oh,
that like?
no, I mean, no. Any other season I had prior to this one ended after USA's. I guess last year in 24, like I did have to keep training for a couple weeks after trials just in case I was going and then I
Hmm.
ended in New York just because I was training well. Um, but yeah, no, most other seasons had been done by at least the end of July, if not earlier. And so that was new.
How did you kind of respond to that? Like, how did you feel
Uh,
about your training going into Worlds?
It was not the best. Um, I think, it wasn't bad. It definitely was not as good as my training leading up to USA's. It's like the couple weeks, especially, yeah, the couple weeks leading up to USA's was like the best I've been throwing in my entire life. Like it was going very, very well. And again, it's not like the training going into Worlds was bad. It just I was having trouble. It just wasn't clicking quite as well. Um, and then especially over in Tokyo, the training sessions I had there were not going super well. Turned it around a little bit in my pre-meet. I felt good after my pre-meet. Um, but yeah, it was just down a little bit, and I think that's also something of just kind of my first time going, having a season this long, and getting to meets like this at this point in the season of just like learning what my body needs to kind of get back into a groove of things. And I think, in a lot of like the conversations and meet recaps and season recaps and everything that AG and I had after the year is just like, okay, maybe this, thing we did in the weight room, maybe I need a little bit more in me to kind of reset my body a little bit, or just different things we kind of realized after going through it and kind of what I need to do for next time. And so again, it wasn't terrible. I was still throwing plenty far enough to make that final. I don't think there was a practice in the last 3 months of the season where I didn't throw far enough at least once to make that final. And so, but at the same time, when training's going a little more rocky than it had been most of the year, then I think that it's a little bit, it's a little, a little tougher to bounce back from. But I mean, no, kind of like I said to you afterwards, like no excuses or anything. But yeah, it definitely was not the quite the level I was training to leading up to USA's, partially because that level of training up to USA's was so good.
So when you, I guess, get to Tokyo and, you're coming into the competition knowing that the last month or so, like, could have gone better, how do you kind of, I guess, try and ignore those feelings and be like, no, like, even if this wasn't ideal, like, I'm still at that point the fifth best thrower in history. Like, you can still attack this kind of global competition like that.
Yeah. And Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I think I absolutely could have done a better job with that. Um, but I know I just like kept going into every training session. It's all right, I'm gonna do what I can today and try and figure it out. And again, like I feel like with my last practice before qualifying my pre-meet, like I did kind of figure it out. Like that was definitely the best practice I had in Tokyo. Definitely probably the best practice in the couple weeks leading up to that. Um, so yeah, so after that I was definitely feeling better and you know, I ha obviously had a good sense of what I needed to do going into the meet and yeah.
And so now looking back on Worlds, and I guess the whole experience of training into Worlds, I guess what are kind of the things that you're taking away from that as a learning experience? Because like you're 26, I'll knock on wood, but there's going to be a lot more world championships in your future. So like, what are you kind of taking away from September in Tokyo?
Yeah, I think kind of some stuff I already said of like we have a lot better idea now of my what my body responds to, especially that late in the season. So just from like a training standpoint, just have yeah, feel a lot better about that. And also just the experience of what the whole, you know, world major meet process is like. I was grateful to have had a couple of, you know, international meet experiences leading up to that. So that wasn't my very, very first time, but at a meet of that scale it was. And so just, you know, what it's like throwing in a stadium like that and how warm-ups go and kind of how long everything takes and how long between throws and, you know, even things of just like how they call you into the ring and how many cameras and stuff that there are around the ring and just all these things that I'd never really, you know, you in an ideal world you hope wouldn't, you know, affect you much. And I absolutely 100% could have done a better job of like staying centered, staying focused, staying, you know, within myself. But I think it definitely was a great, you know, learning experience. I definitely know I could have done better than it to just be a learning experience, but this is where we're at and you know, I'm kind of just like how trials went and I, you know, got better for that. I feel like I'll be better for how worlds went. I just wish it didn't have to have gone that way, but you know, it
Yeah.
did. And yeah, we learn from it and move forward.
Yeah, I talked to Peyton Otterdahl a couple weeks ago, and it's a little different for shot putters because World Athletics makes them do same day finals, unfortunately. But
That's
he described Worlds and the Olympics as kind of it's not always who's the best thrower, it's who can deal with all of the circumstances the best. What was, I guess, the single kind of hardest part about competing at a global championship, or hardest, most different part that you found?
a great question. Um, I think just the one thing that was totally new to me was there being like a separate warm up facility, I guess, that we, and I know it was new for everybody having to be like bussed.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting, but that was new for everybody. That was the only one that was new for there. But no, just the fact of like, okay, there's a facility and like you, if you want to, you can take warm up throws here, but then you go to the call room and you sit and then you go to a different call room and you sit. And it was just a little more kind of involved than what I was used to. So just like, okay, I might finish warming up and then it's like 30, 40 minutes until we start warm-ups in like warm-up throws in the stadium. And then it's only two warm-up throws in the stadium. So that was also something. So I would probably say that just like again, just the overall flow of like warm-ups into competition and and everything like that.
What if we could make you World Athletics president for the day?
Oh,
Like
there's
it is it's like an 18 woman flight you have to get through. Like there are a bunch of other events going on. So like there are logistical challenges, but like what would be your kind of ideal
my goodness.
competition flow for a major championship? Like what do you think would serve athletes the best?
That is such a great question. Um, I I don't even know. I guess just like a little smaller flights. Like 18 women is a lot.
Yeah.
True. But I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I would say smaller flights or just I guess just a more efficient process from warm-ups to competing and kind of streamline that a little bit. But I mean at this again at the same time it's the thing that everyone has to go through and it's, everyone in the playing field has to deal with that and yeah, it's
Yeah.
just
I
I
feel like from talking to people, it sounds like Tokyo is kind of exceptionally uh
mean,
hard when it
obviously,
came
I
to
have
that.
no
So
kind of frame of reference,
yeah.
but again, just kind of comparing it to like meets I had been to, it was definitely like the yeah, kind of longest between things. But then at the same time, I was somewhat prepared for that because, my coach, AJ Cougar, he was on 3 Olympic teams, a number of world teams. So there was one day in the summer after USA's at some point where he's like, all right, like show up to this athletic office building and this is call room one and I'll have you there and you'll wait for 20 minutes. And then I'll walk you over here to our indoor facility and this is call room two and this is where you'll, get your shoes on and do whatever warm-up stuff you need to do to kind of move around. And then, all right, we'll go up to the ring. You'll take 2 warm-up throws with about 10 minutes in between and then kind of go. So again, it's like obviously it's not the same, but I was he did take me through these things having been through that process himself a number of times. So I was
Hmm.
again at least somewhat familiar with the flow of all how all that works, which was kind of fun. But
Yeah. Well, when we one day hopefully have Valerie Adams become president of World Athletics, she'll get everything sorted out.
yeah, I mean, my first act as president of World Athletic would be Hammer in the Diamond League, but
Yeah, that's fair. That's seems like
well,
an easy one. So now that you've had a couple months to reflect on your 2025, what is, I guess there were a lot of big moments in there. What is the thing about this season that you are most proud of?
most proud of. Um, I other than obviously the lot farther throws, I would say just like how I stuck with it through that middle of the season. That was so difficult. Because like I don't know, to be quite honest, there was a point where it was like, well, we'll see how USA's goes. Either I, get what I've been working for and make the world team, or I am done for the year and that wouldn't be so bad either. But I think I am very proud of how I kind of like battled back to again to stick with it and have a lot more belief in myself and just from a throwing perspective execute a lot better and yeah, because I mean it's all part of growing and getting better. You're not gonna throw far every meet, and obviously I would have liked to do better than I did, but yeah, I'm proud of how I stuck with it when it was going rough. And because again, it's easy when things are going well and it's clicking, but when it's not, despite trying as hard as you can for it to go well, that's where it kind of tests you a little bit. So yeah, just proud of how I stuck with it and figured it out and accomplished the main goal I had for the season. Obviously would have loved to do better there, but yeah, be better for it and yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that I think a lot of like younger athletes could kind of take that away because it's so easy in this sport to just get completely obsessed with like the mark and the place and kind of put your value in that. And so I think that's kind of good perspective that even when things aren't, it seems like things are going pretty bad, there's always more meats for things to turn right again. We've talked a lot kind of in passing, I guess, about Coach AG in this interview. So you've worked with him for 3 years now. Every year you've been a post collegiate and you've tacked on 11 and a half meters to your PB since then. What I know you said he basically had to completely overhaul your throw, but like, what is the biggest, not talking like technically, but like, what's the biggest lesson that AG Kruger has taught you in your time working with him?
I mean, I don't know if I call this like a lesson, but
Mhm.
just how like impactful it can be to have someone like believe in you so strongly. And this has been the story of like my whole career of every, level I've been at in high school and college and everything. But like even like this season when I was struggling a lot and like I was, doubting if I'd ever turn it around and figure things out again, like he didn't doubt that. And also just like always reminding me of like, yeah, I'm someone who can throw really far, but like I'm also more than that. And just to have someone who like cares so strongly about like me, the person, and has like at this point like made me a part of his family, and whether that's like his personal family or the family of throwers we have at Ashland, it's just it's yeah, I'm just beyond grateful, and it it makes training fun, it makes it easier. It's yeah, I'm just could not be more grateful for him and for the whole group we have at Ashland. It's just an awesome place to be. I'm so grateful. I don't think there's a better, situation I could be in, I could have found. So
Yeah, and you also are a volunteer coach at Ashland. I spoke with Joe Kovacs a couple days ago and asked him because him and Ashley are doing like a lot of clinics now, and asked him about
yeah.
how coaching makes him a better athlete. How has working with the throwers at Ashland made you a better thrower, or
Yeah.
like has it like made you like think about your throw differently, or like
Oh,
what's been kind of
definitely.
the biggest
Yeah.
benefits of that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it definitely makes you think of new ways to like explain the same concepts of like things I'm trying to work on. Um, and also like I just have, and especially I just have a lot like better understanding of the throws now, and I especially with like discus, I still wish I was a discus thrower because like if I had known some of the stuff I've kind of like figured out just from like coaching them in the last few years and stuff I've heard from AG and other coaches, like I feel like I would have been able to throw so much farther. But anyway, but also just like from a more just like general sense of like how I approach like training and competing and stuff, like it's very easy for me to, or for anyone to just kind of like get caught in your own kind of silo and your own kind of like lane of what you're doing, and it helps kind of bring some perspective of like honestly, like if I see one of my athletes like freaking out over how they're throwing in October, it's easy for me to say to them like, "Hey, it's October. you have so much time and we're gonna figure it out. And by the time the season come around, you'll be in great shape. And they are. But for me, then I kind of look at myself, I'm like, wow, is that what I look like when I'm freaking out when training's not going well? And so it kind of gives like some perspective, like, okay, well, if I can tell them to like, you know, trust the process and, trust where they are in the year and trust their training, I'm generally doing the same thing. Like, obviously, like my timeline of the year is different and like I do some things in training different than them, but like in terms of a general overall system, I'm doing the same thing. So like, you know, if I tell them to trust it and trust us, trust AG, and I'm not doing the same thing, then I don't know. Yeah, it kind of helps give a little different perspective on what I'm doing and how I'm reacting to training. And yeah, it's also just so much fun. Yeah, we have such a good group. And since I'm the only post-collegiate here, they're kind of like my training partners at times,
Hmm.
which 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 is usually a blast. Sometimes they can be little stinkers, but oh, it's fun.
Yeah, I bet. The thing you said about like what if you had stuck with the discus, a random thought I have a lot is I'm like, Val was an All-American in the hammer, like her senior year at Stanford. So now I'm thinking
Yeah,
of an alternate reality where Valerie Allman sticks with the hammer and you
I
stick
don't,
with
I
the
don't, I
discus.
don't mind that she doesn't. I think the field here is already pretty deep. I think
Yeah.
we're all right if she she sticks where she's at.
Yeah. I talked about the 11.5 meter improvement since you started working with AG, but according to your World Athletics page, you have PB'd every single year that you've thrown the hammer. That's
Yeah.
probably going to be a little harder to do in 2026. But
Yee.
I guess what's your like biggest I know you kind of came into throwing and especially the hammer like maybe a little later than some people do. But what's your like biggest piece of advice, especially post collegiately, for continuing to see those improvements year after year and like not really reach a plateau?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I can attribute some of that to again, one, how late I started, two, just the fit I've found here. But I guess I would just be to find a coach and a system that that you believe in and that believes in you, and just buy in 1000%. There's obviously AG's coach was Judd Logan, and there's something he said that I've heard was like buying into a bad program is better than not buying into a good program. When you can buy into a good program, like which is where I'm at, that's where special things can kind of happen. But so just yeah, find a system you believe in and that believes in you, and just do everything you can to make that happen. Be coachable, be, you know, open to attacking what your weaknesses are, and good things will happen.
I know in college, at least like your national placements, you were a little ahead in the weight of where you were in the hammer, but that's kind of, US champ, sixth best in history. That's kind of caught up and evened out now. Where were the things in the hammer where you did kind of have to match what you were doing with the weight, or like where was kind of that or did you think there was any discrepancy between those two, or like,
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Um, yeah, I guess if I think of college and kind of early post-collegiate, it's just like more pulling with the left and kind of getting ahead of the ball, where in weight you can get away with that a little more, in hammer you can't. Um, but I think so. I've said this before, but if just based on my like hammer results alone, I don't think I could have justified to myself keeping at this and training post collegiate. I think without it was the marks I saw I had in the weight. Um, just like, yeah, it wasn't the prettiest, but it wasn't terrible either, but I could get the ball to move and I had that power there to get it going. I and I knew if I could, you know, build on that power and just like refine it more technically, then that's what would be able to get the hammer to go further and then further than I had kind of shown in college. And I also, had great coaches who told me the same thing and made me believe that. And yeah, but if it had been just based on hammer alone, I probably would not still be doing this. I don't know if I could have just based on like personally, I'd thrown my PR was a 67-35. I'd thrown over 66, I think one other time. Um, but yeah.
Well, then maybe the weight's not all that bad if that's the reason we still have Rachel Richardson throwing in 2021. I'm from Florida. We don't really have an indoor season, so I've never been personally victimized by the weight throw, so I don't really understand everyone's major
I
gripes
don't
about it.
either. I don't either. And I will say I see a little more where the guys are coming from with the 35. That's a little bit more of a beast.
Hmm.
I'll do a little drill work with it every now and then, and I can see, yeah, that's not too fun. Um, but well, no, something my college coach used to say was it only hurts if you're doing it wrong, which is kind of true. If you're pulling and you're yanking on it and just kind of, ripping on it with your back and twisting, like, yeah, it'll hurt. But if you're kind of in position where you need to be a little bit more, it might not hurt as bad. It'll hurt a little bit, but not as bad.
Now, on the topic of weight, we're building into this 2026 season. We talked a little bit about what your opener might look like. How excited are you with what might be to come in this indoor season? Like, what are your goals for the weight
Yeah.
this year?
I mean, obviously, goal is always to throw new best PR. I mean, I think one of the bigger goals I have is the world record. Um, See if I get there or not. Um, but yeah, probably just planning on with 3 or 4 meets or so indoors. I think it's always valuable to throw like competition experience no matter where you are, no matter because most of these will just be me either throwing at home at Ashland or going where Ashland goes. I'll throw at Notre Dame again just because the meet, in memory of my coach and I get to see my family, my sister who lives there. Um, and it's just, I think, just a valuable thing to throw in for some kind of like technical elements of what we're trying to do. Um, but yeah, I mean, just getting some more competitions under my belt and just kind of something fun to do indoors. The training can be just kind of a long slog and really repetitive and it's not a bad thing to do something fun that you enjoy that breaks it up and gives you good, competing experience. So,
Yeah, looking at the outdoor season though, unfortunately, it's just men's hammer in the Ultimate Championships. Hammer's not in the Diamond League. So USA's is still going to be insane as it always is. But like, what are you kind of looking at as like goals or like the big kind of target meets for
yeah.
this outdoor season?
I mean, we'll see. Um, I don't have too much of a plan yet. Obviously, it's always a goal to, you know, go outdoors and win a national championship. And even when there's not a meet to qualify for, that's always, something you want to do. Yeah, I don't really know what my schedule will look like beyond that. I have a lot of hope that there will be a stronger domestic schedule this year. I know the plan is to have both of those Grand Prix meets back. Now, who knows what events they'll have, and hopefully they do end up happening this year. So maybe those, I always have my Ironwood. That's like my one of my favorite meets ever. Um, but yeah, I'm not really sure yet. I think one of the nature of this sport is that a lot of these things aren't decided until pretty late, even sometimes on like a week to week basis of just what meets you're invited to, where you can travel to. Um, but yeah, again, hopefully just trying to get into a groove now of also just competing at USA's and then keeping the season going after that. To I think now I'm at a point in my career where like that'll be kind of the timeline of things from here on out, hopefully qualifying for these bigger meets every year that they're offered. Um, so whatever that looks like, I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of what we're thinking.
Yeah, I know the there's that thing about like the USATF tour this year.
Yeah.
From what they've told you guys, does that really like change that much,
I,
or is it
I
kind of just more formal, I guess?
I think it's a little more formal. I think it's definitely a good thing. I think the main thing about it is it's USATF like offering more support to these meets in terms of like logistics and like I think they're like supplying the drug testing and different stuff like that and also just making I think like making sure that some of these meets like don't overlap or something like that. I think it doesn't look like there's too much new added to the
Hmm.
schedule. Um, other than if the Grand Prix meets come back. I think that would be the only real change compared to last year. But I mean it's always a good thing to, to support these meets and ideally make a strong domestic calendar for us because it's so incredibly valuable to travel overseas and get meets and like that. And I hope to do that again next season as well. Um, at the same time, it is taxing and expensive and um, so strong domestic meets where we have the opportunity to stay home but still get strong points and prize money and stuff is super duper important. So I hope that all works out well for this year. And I hope that having that kind of support structure maybe might lead to some more new meets popping up. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, and I did notice looking at the schedule there, there's a lot of throws only meets on that schedule. Like I
Yeah,
think
at least
Ramona's on there, Tucson,
Ironwood, Tucson, and
LA.
yeah, so that's
So
exciting.
that's what I'm most excited about for that.
Yeah.
All right, Rachel, well, that's all I got for you today. So thank you so much for some of your time. I'm excited to see what 2026 holds for you and excited to see you get back in the ring.
Yeah. Thanks so much.